Hello and welcome to Change is Possible podcast. My name is Ani Filipova and I'm your host. When I left my banking career to try something new, the number one question everyone asked me was, how did you find the courage? The thing is, it's not about the courage. It is about knowing what you want and planning for it. That's why I started this podcast, to help you make your career change possible. Each of our guests have done a successful career change, and we are going to discuss practical advice, actionable tips, and inspirational stories that can help you to get unstuck and transition into work that you love. Let's get started. Today, my guest is Simon Ree. He has spent 25 years in banking, working for names such as Goldman Sachs and Citibank. He always had a passion for helping others learn how to use the financial markets to generate wealth. In 2017, he decided to leave the corporate world and devote all of his time to help people live more creative, joyful, and inspired lives. His mission is to revolutionize the way finance is taught by shattering long-term myths that have been perpetuated by Wall Street. Simon also wrote a book. He is the author of the Amazon #1 best-selling book, The Tao of Trading: How to Build Abundant Wealth in Any Market Condition. Hi, Simon. I'm really thrilled to have you in my podcast.
Hi, Annie. Great to be here.
Great. So let's dive into it. The first question to start with, I just wanted to ask you to tell us briefly about your corporate life so we set the scene. What did you do?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up, I was at high school in the late 80s and, I was in my second last year of high school when the 87 stock market crash happened. And I was just kind of transfixed by it all. I found it really quite fascinating. And I went to university, studied economics and finance. And my first job out of uni was working as a futures broker. And learned a lot about technical analysis and trading and how markets work. But I didn't find frozen orange juice and pork bellies as exciting or as dynamic as companies and stocks and that sort of thing. So I wanted to get into the stock market. And anyway, after a stint as a futures broker, I worked as a credit analyst in corporate banking for 3.5 years, which was a great grounding in how to read a company balance sheet and that type of thing. And then it was in the mid-90s, I started at Goldman working in private wealth and very much focused on sort of equities as an asset class. And given my background in the futures market, I had a pretty good working knowledge of derivatives, and I built a business around trading options or helping clients trade options. One thing led to another. In sort of the early 2000s, I was asked to found and head up the markets desk at Goldman for Australasia, looking after Australia and New Zealand. And in that role, my team and I were responsible for all of the equity derivative transactions that happened over the counter, as well as all of the credit and foreign exchange transactions. And as part of that role, we were actively involved in developing strategies, developing investment strategies, structuring them, pricing them, and working with the most sophisticated clients off the bank to, express these ideas in the markets. From there, I got offered a job working for Citibank in Singapore, and I thought, yeah, why not? I'd seen some of the uglier sides of Goldman's culture by that time, working through the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, and I'd never lived in Singapore before, so I thought I'd give that a go. Did that for 6 years, moved back to Australia in 2016, early 2017 for family reasons, and really it was kind of at that point I decided to go it alone, shall we say.
Okay, wow, interesting. A long career of trading.
Yeah.
What happened? Why did you decide to leave your corporate career? What were the driving factors?
I guess it was, you're kind of reaching middle age and wondering what's my mission, what's my purpose in life? And just a realization that everything I'd done up to that point was pretty much centered around helping people who were already incredibly wealthy become even wealthier. And I sort of thought, what is my marginal contribution to society here? And I didn't really like the answers I was coming up with. And so I thought, well, I've got a skill set here. And what I really want to do is share that skill set with people who could really benefit from it. Ordinary working middle-class people who are trying to get up that next rung of the wealth ladder, if you like. I know from working inside the industry that a lot of the investment solutions that are available to so-called retail investors are generally or often not that attractive, and they're often loaded with fees. And what I want to do is help people navigate the markets, understand what's happening in the markets, and most importantly of all, flourish in the markets by learning how to manage risk and find high probability opportunities.
Did you plan for that move? Or was it one morning you wake up and said, okay, I'm leaving now?
I did very little planning. So what happened? I was working for another bank when I moved back to Australia, and I was working in Perth, which is my hometown. I hadn't lived there for about 12 years, but I wanted to move back there for family reasons. I'd been working for this bank for 6-8 months, and they said, oh, look, we need you to move to Sydney permanently. And I said, well, look, that doesn't work for me. In fact, I'd rather be in Singapore than Sydney because at least it's in the same time zone. Travel time is similar. So I said, thanks, but no thanks. And really, I just thought, right, that's it. The shackles are off. I'm going to do it by myself. And I never really planned. I knew I had enough money to last me for a few years. I wasn't kind of under any serious financial pressure. And I also knew that I had a skill set. I knew that even if I didn't do anything else, I could just trade for a living. So I kind of went into it with very little hesitation and very little fear. I just backed myself, started trading, and then built an online business, basically just teaching people how to do what I do, which is trade for a living.
And at that point, did you have your family already? How did they accept it? Because it was a big change, right?
Okay, so here's the thing. But my wife was also working at Goldman. At a different time from me, our careers actually didn't overlap at Goldman, but she was working at Goldman. She resigned to start her own startup with a couple of business partners, literally maybe a year before I did, or a few months before I did. And so she was fully on board. She said, yeah, go on, it's great, do it. You know, we're having fun. I mean, in hindsight, both of us quitting high-paying banking jobs to form our own startups probably wasn't that prudent, but it's worked out. And it meant that she understood my motivations and she was 100% supportive.
Yeah, that's really great because family is the one factor that they all have to agree and be happy with your decision because you're changing their lives, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you said that you were financially okay. And I've learned from my experience that once I was financially okay, then everything else that I was worrying about, quitting my job, was just a noise. But how did you get to financial independence, as they call it? Did you do anything in particular? Did you plan for it? I mean, when I say plan, I mean, did you save with a view that one day you want to live a different life?
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good question. It's a good point. I guess this seed was always in the back of my head. I knew I didn't want to work in the banking industry for, until I quote unquote retire. Yeah, so I guess that seed was always in the back of my head that I wanted to have the flexibility to do something entrepreneurial. And yeah, I mean, I didn't like keep a budget or anything, but you just make sure that you spend less than you earn. No more complex than that, really.
Do you have any financial habits or things that to recommend to people who just start their career or they're in the middle of their career? What should they do just to get to the financial stability stage, which will give them more freedom to decide what next? Don't
spend a lot of money on things that depreciate. I drive a Mazda. I don't drive a Porsche. It's not because I can't afford a Porsche. It's because I just don't really see the point. So, I mean, don't waste your money on brands and expensive cars and flashy stuff that you think is going to make people think more of you. The fact is, you see a Porsche or a Ferrari drive down the street, you might think, oh, that's a nice car. But you never think, gee, the person driving that car looks amazing. I mean,
you're right.
So if you're going to spend money, I mean, just try and, if you're going to spend large sums of money, try and put it into things that will appreciate and invest in yourself, educate yourself, figure out what it is, what skills, what tools you need to make the transfer and do it well ahead of time. I mean, the worst thing I think would be to have a bad day at work, quit your job, and then realize that you're not prepared. And I'm not just talking about financially, I'm talking about the skill set that you're going to need, or figuring out what it is you're going to do, figuring out your mission, if you like.
Yeah. Did you have any doubts when you were leaving?
I didn't have any doubts at all. I was 100% conviction that this is what I wanted to do. And I just felt completely confident. I felt almost like I was being guided. I didn't have any doubts or any fears.
Wow, that's very interesting. I had a lot of doubts, but they went away. So when you left and you started your career, what are the first obstacles? Because it's not smooth sailing all the time. What do you do first, second, third, how to structure it?
Well, the thing is, right, if you're doing like me, I've got an online education business, and I'm working for myself and by myself initially, and you're doing everything. And so very quickly, you've got to become not just an expert in what it is you're delivering, which in my case is trading education, but you've got to become an expert in how to build a website, how to build an email list, how to organize cloud hosting, how to set up email funnels, how to set email autoresponders. You've got to become, really good at WordPress, for example. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to learn, and you need to do it. If you haven't done it before, you've got to do it quickly because your business is dependent on it. And you sort of think, oh yeah, my expertise is X, but the fact is you probably only spend 30% of your time doing X, and the other 70% of the time is building and running a business.
No, absolutely.
And the other obstacles are, one thing that I just didn't appreciate enough in the corporate world was just the amount of support and infrastructure you get. You got a computer problem, you ring a help desk and a technician comes around and fixes it for you.
Yeah.
I had days where I'd spend half a day trying to fix my printer. It's incredibly unproductive. And then if you run out of stationery, it's not just a case of walking down to the stationery cupboard. It's a case of getting in your car and driving down to the shops and buying a box of pens or paper or whatever it is you need. So you've got to become really self-sufficient. I think the other big obstacle as well is just adding structure back into your day, because when you commute to work, you get to the office. Obviously that's probably a little bit up in the air recently with COVID, but the fact is if you've got an employer, you've got a certain amount of structure imposed on you because there's expectations, there's targets, there's goals, there's sales meetings, there's performance reviews. All of that is part and parcel of being in the corporate world. And whilst you might not like it, it does help focus you and give you some structure. So that's another obstacle. You've got to be a self-starter. You've got to be the sort of person who doesn't need a boss kind of kicking them or dangling a carrot or waving a stick. You've really got to be able to get off your own backside and do it. And I just found just little routines like, getting up, making your bed, doing some exercise, cup of coffee, right, start the day. Little kind of rituals like that.
You said that you had to learn a lot of things. Did you go to somebody like a mentor, or do you have a coach, or you just did it yourself, going from site to site and learning?
It was a bit of a combination. I had sort of people who'd done similar things and they kind of pointed me in the direction of the resources that I should use, and that really did kind of help with the learning curve. And then there's a certain amount of stuff you've just got to do the work yourself as well. And it didn't take that long. It probably took me kind of 3 months to kind of get up to speed on all of that. I'd sort of had an interest in it anyway. So even my job, with this in the back of my mind, I would make sure that I had a bit of a clue as to what was going on and what sort of solutions were out there that would be helpful. But certainly having a couple of friends who'd made similar jumps within the last couple of years, it was very, very helpful.
Yeah. When you start by yourself, you have to create a little bit of noise so people know you, get to follow you. How did you do that? Did you have clients before that, or how did you build your client base?
I wrote a best-selling book.
That was the other question I had.
Yeah, the book has obviously been helpful. Social media has been helpful for me, particularly LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been a great platform for me to, I guess, demonstrate a degree of expertise, engage people in conversation, share my thoughts, share my knowledge. And that's been a really useful way for, I guess, people to find me. I did a few speaking tours as well back when we were allowed to travel and do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, public speaking gigs were really helpful as well, especially in the early days. Yeah, so the combination of, public speaking, the book, social media.
And how did you decide to write the book? Did you always have this inclination to write a book?
Yeah, I did. Well, I wouldn't say always, but certainly in recent years, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of books written on trading and options trading. And I've read a decent number of them, but they are, without exception, quite tough and quite boring. And some of them, they're just really dull. It's hard to finish them. And I wanted, my ambition, my mission with the book was to write a book on options trading that is both easy and fun and accessible. And that was really my two guiding principles. I want to get the information to people, but do it in a fun way that's engaging and easy for people to understand. And I think I've succeeded given the feedback that I've had from the book. But yeah, it's a book that I think only I could have written. There's a lot of kind of personal anecdotes in there. And I think it is unlike any other trading book that has been written before it.
How long does it take you to write the book?
From, I guess, putting pen to paper to actually getting it published, it was a little more than 12 months. Actually writing the book itself, writing the content for the book was about 6 months. And then, I forget which author it was. Michael Crichton, the author of Jurassic Park. A famous quote for him is, "The bad news for new authors is the books don't get written, they get rewritten." So you've got this draft number 1 of a manuscript and you go through and read it. You think, oh my goodness, did I write this? Who's ever going to read this piece of crap? And then you remove large chunks and rewrite and reword. And sort of by the time I'd got through kind of 4 drafts, it was in a shape that I was kind of proud of. I was happy to let other people read it by then.
Yeah.
And that was when I went to the publisher, Scribe Media, and they gave me some sort of high-level editorial feedback as well, which was very useful. So kind of draft number 5 is the one that got published, and the publishing process takes a few months as well. So there was another, I guess, 4 months or thereabouts.
All right. So how is the life of entrepreneur? How do you find it? What are the pluses and what are the minuses?
So, well, I'll start with the minuses, get them out of the way. I mean, we touched on the loss of structure. So you've really got to be self-motivated. For me, it was, I guess, a bit of loneliness, that loss of your inbuilt social circle that you have working in a corporate. You go to an office and you're just around a bunch of people every day, and some of them you really like and a few of them you might not. But the fact is you're around people, and when you go out by yourself, it can be pretty isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big thing for me to deal with. And there were several times in my first year, where I really kind of missed being in an office and having those water cooler conversations, missed having lunch with people after work drinks and that type of thing. I really did miss that. And what I found was that there was just a lot more effort required on me to maintain social links.
I see.
And I think that's a really important tip I'd pass on to anybody who's going out on their own. Just be aware that you're probably going to go through a period of loneliness, and the effort is all going to probably have to come from you, because all of your former colleagues, they've still got their social circle. So you just make an effort. So that was probably the main negative. I mean, the big positive, of course, is just being master of your own destiny and the freedom that comes from that. You know, the idea of having to ask another adult's permission to have a holiday or take time off work just seems kind of crazy to me now. My wife and I, we both work from home, and we've just got such a great lifestyle now. Like I said, we've got a 16-month baby, and, you know, we can take him out and take him to the baby gym and spend a lot more time with him than we ever could have if we were at corporate jobs. And if I want to take a trip, if I want to go on holiday, it's all on me. Yeah, so the freedom is, I think, the real benefit.
Wow.
And just more than that, being able to align what you do with your mission and not the mission of some faceless shareholders.
Yeah.
They're never going to say thank you to you. Just that, alignment of interests.
Yeah. So it has been now how many years? 5 years?
Yeah, I guess we're coming up on 5 years now. Yeah.
When you go back to when you took the decision to leave and your plans of what you're going to do, what you're doing now, is it the same? Is it different? How it is different and why?
Is it different from what I planned?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Not really. I guess I had a fairly general idea of what I wanted to do. I wasn't super specific. And I mean, it does evolve and you do take course corrections. But I think what was more important to me was the mission rather than, the details of how the business looks. So I'm quite open-minded and flexible in terms of making course corrections, making changes and that sort of thing, so long as I'm true to my mission.
I see. And do you have any regrets? Anything that you would do differently if you do it again now?
I don't have any regrets now. I mean, I did go through periods of regret in the first year because a couple of things happen, all right? Well, in fact, a few things happen. One is you lose your social circle. So I did find I was getting a little bit lonely, and writing a book can be a lonely experience as well. You lose a degree of identity. You've got that Goldman Sachs business card and that it opens doors.
Yeah.
You've got a big, powerful brand behind you. Then all of a sudden I'm Simon Ree, founder of Dow of Trading. Well, who the heck are you, So you lose a little bit of identity. It's going to sound shallow, but you work for a big corporate like that, they kind of fly you around business class and they put you up at 5-star hotels, and all of a sudden you're flying, low-cost carriers and staying at 3-star hotels. And because, if you're paying for it for yourself, like I said, you don't splurge on things that don't make you money. So, I guess they were just some of the, not regrets, but things I just had to kind of adjust to, get used to. But looking back now, I've got no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah, the same with me. I mean, it's been 8 months only, but no regrets whatsoever. I did have an identity, not crisis, but, thinking, well, who I am now. Am I nobody or am I somebody? But that actually passed very quickly. And now, after 8 months, I look back and I wonder, why on earth did I think that? So any closing remarks, the 3 things people should do throughout their careers in order to, at one point, to have a life that they want to have?
Yeah. The reality from what I've seen over, 25 years in corporate life is probably more than 50% of people do not love their job. And in fact, a lot of people hate their job. And if you're feeling like your job is just misaligned with your purpose or what you want to do, start planning. Start thinking about what it is you want to do. What particular areas of expertise have you got that can help solve people's problems?
Mm-hmm.
People will pay for pleasure and also pay for pain removal. So if you can enhance people's enjoyment of life, or if you can remove pain points for them, you've got a skill set people will pay you for. So you just got to figure out what your skill sets are and how you can monetize them. But I think the sooner you start thinking about this, the easier it is, and the more confidence you'll have to make the step when it comes. And just to be perfectly frank as well, my pay took a big dip that first year. I was obviously in a well-paid job, and it took me 3.5 years to kind of replace the salary that I was previously earning. So there was a couple of fairly lean years there, but now I've sort of finally done that, and I've got all the extra freedom as well. So it's the best possible outcome.
That's a great outcome, right?
Yeah.
And it was great talking to you. Thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure, Annie. Lovely to talk to you too.
All the best in your endeavors in the future.
And you too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Change is Possible podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If there is any topic that you're interested in or would like to nominate a guest, please drop me a message via LinkedIn. Have a great day. Bye.